This, but no, wow, she had the power.
Well, anyway,
You didn't miss, you did,
yeah,
she's, oh, be vice president.
yeah. Well,
She was.
Claudia's got some power here. Anyway, she might talk to you about the 11/17
Okay,
paper.
I'll be ready.
You'll be right, now how to handle this, huh?
I'll be ready. Yeah.
Okay, wait, don't
You
be
look
up.
familiar.
Charlie's here. Don't be up.
Hey.
Charlie's here. Where do I see you? It's on Sunday.
Oh, you went to the tea?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I saw you, yeah, you gave the lecture.
How was the tea? Was it boohee tea?
Oh, I didn't drink the tea, I took a piece of cake.
Yeah, the tea cakes seem to be more popular than the tea.
Yeah.
No, I did research on the tea, that was thrown off the ship and that sort of.
Yeah.
The colonial favorite was boohee, and I may be pronouncing it incorrectly. BO-HEE.
Okay.
And came in bricks.
Sunday
Yeah.
night.
And that was the one that they objected to the most because it was the most popular. And what they were doing first was intercepting the ships so that they had to go back. And that really rankled the
That
British.
is not good.
Rankled the British.
Oh, jeez. I had an attitude, huh?
And then coffee became popular.
Yeah.
So I was wondering if you had boohee tea down at the.
That looks like something that we might want next year.
It was very
just to
good
be politically correct.
Yeah. No, his lecture was very good. I learned a lot, how South Brunswick back then was kind of reporting to
It was Piscataway.
Piscataway.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, I
I was going to talk about the same thing.
Yeah, well, that's why
I
I
was
need
sitting
you to
there.
chime in. To add your 2 cents. I got a ton of maps, and I'm going way back. I'm going back to the tobacco crap. Oh no, wait a minute.
I got 2 cents. Okay,
There you go.
we're good.
2 cents. Oh, I could top that. I'll top that because they just celebrated his birthday.
Oh, you've got an old penny?
No.
See
If I have one. Yes, I do. See, it's green.
Yeah.
That's a greenback dollar.
Uh-huh.
Okay, or like the old greenback
Ah.
dollar. You know who invented that?
Mr. Green.
No,
Nathaniel
no, and not Mr. Dollar either.
I don't know.
Elbridge Jerry Spalding. You know who Elbridge
Oh,
Jerry
Spalding.
Spalding?
The
is?
baseball guy.
Yeah.
That's my great grandfather.
Oh.
He invented the greenback dollar.
Wow.
Did you get royalties off of it?
Uh,
You get your
I
name in
got
Washington?
zilch.
Anything in Washington with the frame? And go
Yes,
say, that's my
he got a
great-great-"
letter. He got a letter from Lincoln.
Oh, wow.
It's the last time I saw it, and I only saw it once because I visited my long lost relatives. It's my long lost family.
Yeah.
Because I was adopted.
Yeah.
Up in Buffalo.
Buffalo, wow.
Albert Jerry Spalding was the mayor of Buffalo.
Yeah.
He was a banker,
Uh-huh.
and Lincoln got him to work on the financial system to get the North through the Civil War. And he came up with the idea for the greenback dollar. And then he wrote a book saying that it's only temporary, and we should then go back to our regular system and not have the greenback dollar. But the Congress people at the time, majority of them said, "Oh, this is a great idea, cheap money, blah 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 blah." And the farmers loved it a lot. So he didn't get elected back to the House of Representatives.
Oh, that happens.
But he got a letter from Lincoln thanking him
Wow.
for helping. And it was up on the mantle of Martha Sidway Adams in her house. And she was my host when I was up there.
Oh, very wow.
And Martha Sidway Adams was a Spalding who married into the Adams family of John Adams, Sam Adams. So we're talking about big time people.
Oh, wow, yeah.
And I didn't know about that part of my past until I was like in my late twenties, early thirties.
Yeah, there's a lot that comes, like that lecture that he gave on Sunday about, South Brunswick, and Kingston, and all that stuff. I was surprised that going up to, how far it extended, yeah.
Yeah, Charlie, I don't know if you saw this. This is just something I found looking for the map, so I thought somebody might be interested.
Ooh.
I think this is from Clayton. Did the sketches of this is 1872.
Oh.
Music.
Oh, yeah.
This is,
Oh, we got music today?
Somebody put some music on. Yeah.
oh, wow, this is big time.
Here's a Kingston one from 1872.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
And it's got a lot of names there. And
Yep.
I don't know if you have all those names, but that sort of gives you a layout of the town. And since we've got a lot of details in these maps, I brought these.
Yeah.
Other work
Because we're
online.
getting along in the tooth. We might need these.
Oh, look at the handle on that one.
Well, this is in case anybody gets hostile.
Yeah,
I could use that.
yeah, well, no, there was a lot of history that, informative.
Yeah. Well, as Kingston goes, that's how South Brunswick goes. That's the way we gauge the way the history is being interpreted.
Well, yeah, like most people,
We always defer to Kingston.
well, like now, most people don't even know that there's
Yeah.
they don't even know. Because when I went around the county, oh, wow, I live in Princeton.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I said, sorry, sir. You don't live, you live in Kingston, Middlesex County, not Versa.
Yeah, but does he have a Princeton address?
Yeah, but that's the post office.
Yeah,
Well,
that's the
who
catch.
did that? Who did that?
Post office.
Yeah, I said, the federal government post office.
Yeah.
You don't live in
Yeah.
Princeton, Oh, my
Well, yeah,
God.
that's well.
Well,
we'll
it was
cover that.
originally it was
Yeah, I know.
I think it was
Okay,
oh,
we
wait,
have
five,
local
Yeah.
talent
Hey,
coming in.
welcome.
Originally the 4542 was rural.
Hey,
delivery
how are
from
you?
the Princeton post
Okay.
office.
Yeah,
Greetings.
Greetings.
I
Greetings
found
and
that out about
salutations.
5 years ago, about, people living in Kingston more towards US one. Some of the houses in there.
It was
But-
RFD.
Yeah, they were
Start
getting
with this
rural
packet.
mail delivery.
But you're gonna have to
Oh,
share
yeah.
because I was only allowed a certain amount of paper.
Yeah.
Oh, my
They're-
goodness,
they're-
they're
They're
limiting
they're
you.
really watching me.
Oh,
Oh, my
we
goodness.
check it all at work.
Because it was too small.
Yeah, oh,
Anyway, we're gonna have a talk probably next year on the.
And if
Kingston
you
post
need
office,
to look at details, I brought
which is
these.
fascinating.
Excellent.
that was, no, I
Hey,
heard that from the people
anytime you're
living.
ready to go, I think we can
They
go.
tell me they
Okay.
used to get
Yeah.
the
All
rural
right.
delivery,
Yeah.
but I,
So we have our
in the
audience at
90s.
home.
so I was like, what?
Okay.
Rural
As
delivery?
soon as we reel in John, we'll be all set.
Hey, Johnny. I'm good.
I'd like
Excellent.
to,
Did you want to take a
Oh,
look at
thank
the
you.
packet as we
Thank
go
you.
along on it?
Yeah, okay, I'll take one. Sure.
It was fun doing.
oh, I.
Just in time, here's a packet.
Hey,
Yeah.
hey, how you doing?
Frustrating.
And if you need to look at details, I brought this.
The good news is that it was fact. I could deal with facts. It's who said what, why they said it and stuff.
Yeah, stay away from politics.
Okay, we're ready to start?
Yeah, we're ready to go.
Okay. There's a few things that we're gonna try to address tonight. And Randy came up with a catchy title with some coaching from me.
Yeah, that's not how it went.
Is everybody listening? Okay, how did South Brunswick get its south? And that's sort of a takeoff on some movie or this.
Yeah.
So, really, the key is the whole name of it, South Brunswick. I mean, where did it come from? How did it get started? And the hidden question is what it could have been if it weren't South Brunswick. What
Oh.
would we have be called if it's not South Brunswick?
Ooh.
Oh.
So all through this, I'm gonna be throwing out some names of possibilities of alternatives to South Brunswick. And of course, that would then have a domino effect on things that are surrounding us. Okay, the North Brunswick thing, the East Brunswick thing, Plainsboro, Cranbury, all that. So we're gonna try to cover a lot of things by going around South Brunswick and including a larger area than just South Brunswick. So when we talk about the borders here, I'm not really up on all the details on the changes because some of the changes were very minor and very hard to find information on. I mean, they're recorded in, let's say, the county offices, and they're recorded in the township offices and so on, but you'd have to go to those places to find them. Here you go. Paul. Okay, now, this is an old map that you have here, and this shows the whole county, Middlesex County. And a key to remember here is what was the focus of the county? Because the focus of the county, what we call the county seat, is going to determine a lot about the surrounding communities. Okay, so I'm going to deal with the Native Americans first.
Okay, the first thing we have up here, hold on a sec. I put him in township, so I have to actually find, because it's further on, because I went by the notes.
Yeah, that's no problem
So let me
because
just cursor through
this
there.
is the way in modern times they flash things so quickly.
So we have,
Okay, this is a
Yeah.
picture of Claudia, the secretary of the library. Claudia
Being
is
recorded.
known for her distinctive tattoos and the fact that she's not fully dressed. Okay, this is my chance to get back at Claudia because
I'll play it for us.
she's the reason why I could only have so many copies of this stuff. But anyway, that's one of the Lenape chiefs. Now I'm going to start with the Native Americans before Henry Hudson sent some of his crew to Sandy Hook to discover New Jersey. That's where it all starts. So we're going way, way back. And we're going back to the 1600s. And the map that you see on the top of your packet, that's the one we're going to look at first. Believe it or not, this map was done in 1656.
Wow.
Now that's going way back before we even get to borders done by the settlers who came to our area. And the Native Americans, and this is a good one to show the Raritan River. The Native Americans didn't have a concept of borders as the Europeans had a concept of borders. Borders to Europeans is you have landmarks and you stake out and you have ownership to a property and you have papers that show you have ownership. Now, this is going to cause trouble when the settlers purchase from the Native Americans. The concept of the Native Americans was, oh, you want to buy our land? Well, that's fine. There are no borders. So you set up your own borders however you want it. You know, we have hunting grounds and we have places where we travel like streams and we have some trails and that sort of thing. But the Lenape tended to be a very passive Native American group. And they were subjugated by larger tribes that were up north, like northern Pennsylvania, New York, and northern New Jersey. And they had to pay tribute to them. So technically, as far as land ownership, it would be the subjugated tribe didn't own anything, and they didn't have a concept of ownership. So when the Europeans come along, the Dutch, and then the English, then you have this thing of purchase from the Native Americans, like what the Higgins family did. The problem with that is the land was already owned and staked out by proprietors. The proprietors didn't live here. They lived in England, and they were wealthy types investing in land. So they have the papers to the land. The Native Americans don't have a concept of papers and sign a contract and that sort of thing. So when the Higgins family gets their land from the Native Americans, this is Jedediah Higgins, he trades a pig, a sow with her piglets for 1,000 acres of land on both sides of what was Assunpink Trail that became Route 27 Kings Highway. So he's got ownership of it, word of mouth, okay, like a handshake, that type of thing. Smoke the peace pipe, that's it. But the thing is, the proprietor was already there. There's a Harrison, there's a Sonmans. Those are the two proprietors who own most of the land that is now South Brunswick, or South County, Middlesex County, and also over in Somerset County. And I have a map that shows you that. So that's the Native American thing where they don't have the boundaries. So if we look at this first map, this is drawn by somebody who has an imagination. And you'll notice the islands off the coast of New Jersey are huge compared to what we really know that they are. Spits of land off the coast, that type of thing. Talking about the Jersey Shore. So he's making those very large. And look at all the rivers that he has in West Jersey flowing into the Delaware River. I doubt if there's that many that are that large, but it's his imagination. And it's all based on just a few Dutch people going across New Jersey, being guided by Native Americans to get from, let's say, the Raritan River to the Delaware River. And they're going through land, and you see where it says Matavankans?
Yeah.
Okay, now this is a Dutch person taking somebody who, in an oral tradition, talked to probably some Native Americans and said, this is the name of the tribe. This would be a sub-tribe of the Lenni Lenape, okay? In central Jersey, it's the Unami Lenni Lenape. Now, I'm telling you these because these are possible names for a town. We could be called South Unami instead of South Brunswick.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this would be like a temporary site. And this is the type of thing, of course, these are some large fish that you have here. Is this the Delaware River?
They're sturgeons.
Yeah, that's sturgeon, okay. This wouldn't actually be South Brunswick. But this is the type of thing that would South Brunswick area would be used for. Hunting grounds, like the swamp areas, Lawrence Brook, the Millstone River, that sort of thing. So the Native Americans would use this, get to it either by the trails or by using the waterways. And it's a fluid area. They would have maybe a temporary settlement for the summer and then go back to a more permanent settlement for the winter. It's that type of thing. So it would be a seasonal thing. We didn't have a sub-tribe set up in South Brunswick that was a permanent establishment. The artifacts, the archaeological digs and so forth don't show that. So we have a very fluid area. Therefore, we don't have any boundary lines, nothing like that until the Europeans get here. But they leave us some clues and they leave us some names. And this is why this map is very interesting. You see the Raritan River there, shown to be a little shorter than it actually is. And you see the Nevesinks?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we have the Navesink River, and that was a sub-tribe. I would imagine that the person who designed this map, the larger the tribe, the larger the lettering on the map. So the Matavankans were probably a very large sub-tribe of the Unami, which was actually part of the Lenape Nation. So Lenni Lenape is the nation name, Unami is the regional name, and then you have the sub-tribes that you have on this map. And you might be interested in another part of New Jersey, because actually, for what this guy was told when he designed the map, this is a pretty good representation of New Jersey. It sort of has the shape. You can identify this and say, yeah, this looks like New Jersey. And you know, you have the Raritan, you have the Hudson, you have the Delaware River. So there are things that you can identify as you're talking about 300 plus years later, and you can identify this all that. So I got this map for you, and I hope you can get something out of it. And notice the spellings of things. The spelling back in those days was horrible. And you're talking about from Dutch to English, and then going through the centuries and all that. And you can see, like you see Barnegat. Well, here they're spelling it Barnegat. And you can still figure out what it is, but in some cases you're going to have it translated by an expert, and I'm no expert on it, so I can't help you there.
And Irehaven, which would be Egg Harbor.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So take it for what it's worth. Now, let me run down some of the sub-tribes, and below the sub-tribes, guess what? You have further divisions. You have your clans, and then you have your families. And with the Lenni Lenape, they are tracing their ancestry through the matrilineal line, through the mother. And for the sub-tribes, like in our area, they would have the mother as what we would call the chief. But in wartime, the male, the sachem, or the head person who's not the sachem, because the sachem is like a wise man. He's the one you go to for counseling. That would be the male in wartime. Well, as I said, the Lenni Lenape were very passive. Well, one of the reasons was the matrilineal, the mother running the sub-tribe. And as I say, you would have that in the area. Okay, now, the first Europeans to hit New Jersey was in 1609. This is when Hudson's, some of his crew members got off the ship, go to check out the area, get some whatever they could for food, etc. Hudson did not land in New Jersey. He didn't personally come ashore. But some of his crew did. I have some Indian names for different landmarks. And again, I show you this so that you can get some alternate ideas for South Brunswick, what we could possibly be called. Okay, now, the Lenni Lenape were in the Eastern Algonquin Confederacy. That meant that the Algonquin nation was dominant over the Lenni Lenape. So we're talking about, we weren't inhabited by a major tribe, we were inhabited by a minor tribe. Okay. And then the subgroup for what we would call Central Jersey was the Unami. The Unami means downriver. And I guess what they're talking about is the Raritan River. Now, there was an Indian group called the Raritans. And we do have a town in New Jersey called Raritan.
Taken.
Right. Here's some other names that might be possibilities. The Assunpinks. We have the Assunpink Trail, but there was a sub-tribe there. The Matas, the Shakamaxons, the Chickaquas, the Raritans. You know what that's all about. The Natachokes, the Tutelos, the Narratagons, the Sanhekins. Let's see. The Millstone River, the Indian name was Matawang. Do you know what that meant? It's not good. Bad to travel. Wasn't the best way to go.
Don't go there.
Yeah.
South Jersey.
Okay. Wampawag. Anybody know what that is?
Well, I didn't study Indian languages.
Well, you were a loser.
Yeah.
It's Stony Brook. Okay, off the Millstone River. Now, what was the name of Princeton before it was Princeton? What did people call the area? The European settlers, Stony Brook. And then it became Princeton, Princetown. Okay, so any one of those names could have been a name that a town could pick up and use. Now, that doesn't explain the South. But think of us as possibly South Chickawaw. Or I'm not pronouncing that exactly right, but that's close enough. Okay, now, here are some other local sub-tribes. And there's the Quiramex, the Kesiaks, the Isariks, the Metapisi, the Pekawans, the Turantikas. And what is Piscopec? No, that's an interesting one. We'll get to that.
Oh, that's another thing.
That's a whole, that's a horse
No,
of
that's a
another
whole-
color.
oh, I picked it up from his
Piscopec, what
lecture.
is that?
Yeah.
Episcopalians.
No,
I say it.
you're thinking like a European. Stop it.
Oh,
Piscopec, Lawrence Brook.
of course.
There you go. Lawrence Brook. So the things around the Indians, the Native Americans gave their names, but our area sort of wiped out the names. So what do we end up with? Indian Fields, you know, which is totally European and should have another name, tell you the truth. And we shouldn't have named a school after that either. Okay, but that's an editorial comment.
And look at the nice picture of Lawrence Brook up there.
There you go.
There you go.
Now, let's stick with Lawrence Brook, because when the Europeans come in, I think it's Thomas Lawrence was the one who purchased land in this area. But he wasn't a member, as far as we can tell, of the Lawrence family that was involved with the big farm, big plantation off Ridge Road. Okay, that was a different family. That was a family from Philadelphia. So the Thomas Lawrence we're talking about here for this eastern end of South Brunswick, got his name on the brook, was a friend of John Indians. Now, who's John Indians? He's the one who started Indians Ferry so people could get across the Raritan River. And one of the first names for New Brunswick was Indians Ferry. What was the name for Indians Ferry before it was Indians Ferry? Prigmore's Swamp.
Rigmore Swan.
Now, we could have been called South Prigmore.
Swamp.
South Swamp.
We could have been called South Indian. Okay? We would have dropped the swamp because we got our own swamps. And we're not talking about the swamp where New Brunswick was. He said the mosquitoes were horrible, the first settlers to come in. But this Lawrence Brook was set up by a baker, Thomas Lawrence from, I believe, Staten Island. And he, I think, was an absentee landowner, sort of like a proprietor. I don't know if he was actually a proprietor, but you're talking about many, many acres. Okay? So we're getting into the part where we're talking about the Europeans coming in. Now, let me give you a chronology of this, and Randy, as say something, maybe you can find a picture that goes with it.
Yeah. Look, I'm trying to follow along. Which one we go for?
We're all over the map.
We are.
Literally, we're all over the map.
God, I know that map.
Okay, you can turn to your next map of the one that has the Native Americans on it.
Where should I go?
This is gonna talk a bit about Piscataway,
Oh, I think I have this guy.
and it's going, I labeled a couple of things here, they're sort of faded. But I got Sand Hills there for you on this second map. And I'm trying to see if we have a date for this. Oh, yeah, 1682. So we're really moving along history-wise. Okay. Now, let me get you up to 1682 with a lot of stuff, and we're looking at Piscataway. The reason for Piscataway is Piscataway comes from Piscataqua, which is a Native American name for a place up in southern New Hampshire, where English Europeans came over and settled up a community. They weren't really in tune with the Massachusetts Pilgrims and all that. And some of the people up there were dissatisfied with the Piscataqua. There's a river up there by that name. And so they moved down to this area, which became Piscataway. So Piscataqua, now Piscataway. And that was one of the first townships in the Jerseys, East Jersey, West Jersey. And they laid claim to where we are now. Parts of Somerset County, parts of Middlesex County. So this is coming across the river laying claim. Now, where did some of our settlers come from? Higgins came from Piscataway. The Wetherells came from Piscataway. So we could have easily been called South Piscataway. And then we would have a Native American name.
There's
Oh,
actually,
it's a New England Native American name, but it's a.
Yeah, right. We steal from one, steal from
there's an
another.
area actually called Piscataway. I don't know if it's where it is, but it's across the river directly from Mount Vernon, across Potomac.
Oh,
Area they
okay.
call it. I don't know if it's Piscataway part of State Park or whatever, but the area is Piscataway.
And possible that somebody from Piscataway went there
Yeah,
and
it's across the
took the
Potomac.
name
It's
with them.
directly
Because that
across
was
the
a common
Potomac.
thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let me get you through the chronology here.
The Piscataqua River is in Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
There you go. Yeah, that's the southern coastal area.
So it's
Yeah.
just the area that isn't Massachusetts.
Okay, now in 1610, the Delaware River is explored for the first time. Dutch explorers were big 1614 to 1623. In 1632, Charles I grants New Albion, which is a name for what? New Jersey.
Why would-
Okay, one of our earliest names, New Albion, to Sir Edmund Plowden. In 1636, a Dutch colony is set up, and that's called New Amsterdam. You're familiar with that. Okay, and then in 1638, New Sweden, the Delaware River.
That's the middle of the Delaware River, by the way.
Oh.
That's the wing dam by Lambertville. And you can walk out on the wing dam
Oh, wow.
right into the middle of the river, and it swirls all around you. It's really worth a visit if you ever just go. It's just south of Lambertville. It's on the canal path.
Yeah, and that's a good one because that would probably say the Swedes and the Finns, they were involved too, didn't get up that far.
No.
They didn't get up that far. And of course, they were there for a very short amount of time. So by 1641, the Swedes and Finns have a colony going on the Delaware River. 1655, the Dutch claim all of the territory south and west of the lower Hudson River, down to the Delaware River. This was called Achterkoll, and it ended the Swedish rule. Now, this is another name that could have been for the whole area. Instead of New Jersey, it could have been called Achterkoll or New Achterkoll, I guess, or something like that. In 1664, the Dutch surrendered New Amsterdam to the English. Now, here's where the proprietors come in and the land sales, and you had to have it in paper, contracts, the whole bit. March 12, 1664, King Charles II grants a land patent to his brother, James, Duke of York. The Duke of York grants land to Sir George Carteret. We have a Carteret. And Lord John Berkeley. We have a Berkeley. They call it New Caesarea. So instead of New Albion, now it's called New Caesarea, the Latin. And we don't have a town in New Jersey called Caesarea, but we could have one.
That was after.
Could be us.
Caesar. So is Caesar, is that how they named it? Caesarea, what was that from?
So that would be like the land of Caesar.
Caesar, okay.
Yeah. Okay. May 26, 1668. So I have exact dates for you here, so you get a sense of history. First assembly in Elizabethtown. Philip, a cousin of Sir George Carteret, is the first governor. 1673, the Dutch recapture the territory. This is a short blip in history because it only lasted till February 9th, 1674. Then it goes back to England. In 1676, I believe this is your first province line, and this divides East and West Jersey. And this was established by a deed from Sir George Carteret. In 1673, Lord Berkeley sold his interest to Fenwick and Billing Quakers. So the Quakers are going to be big in West Jersey, and the non-Quakers are going to be big in East Jersey. And that province line has something to do with our county, Middlesex County.
And I just wanted to point out, what we have up there on the screen is, this is where some of the lines were established, right there, right outside of South Brunswick,
Great.
right in Kingston, yeah.
Yeah, and this has to do with Dr. Greenland.
Mhm.
Right, and I think, isn't he considered the first settler for Princetown?
It's the first building on the road between what's now New Brunswick and what's now Trent.
Okay, good. And I have a feeling there were other people there before him, but they were probably squatters.
No, there's no reason to build anything. The
Yeah,
thing is that the native tribe, which was sort of based in Princeton Township someplace,
yeah,
was that they were there.
yeah,
You know, and they acted as guides for people who got lost.
right.
Which
And I
It's
read
not
that
uncommon.
Greenland had land on both sides of the Millstone River.
oh yeah, you just gotta.
Yeah, so we can also claim it too for South
Okay.
Brunswick. And Barefoot Brunson, or
Right,
Brinson.
that's his,
His son-in-law.
son-in-law, okay.
Yeah.
His daughter, but right.
And he and I think his brother or somebody in the family were sheriffs. And at that time,
He's a surgeon too, right?
no, not Greenland.
Oh, not
I'm
Greenland,
talking
okay.
about the Brunson.
Oh, yes,
Brunson.
yes,
Yeah.
because Greenland was convicted of it.
And at that time, I
He
think,
was a great guy.
yeah, Barefoot Brunson, colorful guy. Got Greenland, probably a colorful guy. Higgins was a colorful guy.
Greenland got cut out, got kicked out of New England
Right.
because he was an adulterer and he was
Huh.
doing all sorts of
Now,
other
he
things.
came from
He got
Piscataway too, didn't he?
Who knows where he came from? New England somewhere.
Right, well, I bet you Piscataway.
It would probably be a reasonable thing.
Yeah, so that whole crew was very important to our area. They get slighted all the time because nobody remembers. Okay, when Carteret died, William Penn and others bought East Jersey in 1682 and formed the 24 proprietors who sold the land in parcels. Okay, so now we get to March 14th, 1682. The land is parceled by the 24 proprietors, and most of them are absentee. They never set foot in the land that they own. And so a lot of their names aren't attached to the towns and so forth of the area that they own. Like your Harrison, New Jersey is not connected to the Harrison that owned most of South Middlesex County, or South Brunswick, southern part of it, and over into Somerset County. Sonmans, there's no town named Sonmans, but Sonmans own most of South Brunswick, as far as proprietors were concerned. So we could be called Sonmans.
How many acres? Do you know what he had?
Oh, he was in the tens of thousands.
Okay, so it went way up.
Yeah, the idea was to buy big and sell cheap allotments of land. Okay, and the problem is you already had settlers here that had made deals with the Native Americans. So a lot of those people, they did have land riots and so forth, that goes later on, but they had to renegotiate with the proprietors in lots of cases. And some of those farmers were so poor they couldn't do it. And so you had the ones that were saying, I own the land, the Native Americans sold it to me, blah, 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 blah. Now, the Native Americans had a strange take on this, and they didn't leave the area. They assumed that just because they sold the land to somebody, that doesn't mean they can't hunt on it, and they can't camp on it, and they can't do what they've always done, because it's their ancestors did it, therefore they're going to do it. And so that was a difficulty too. So the ones who dealt with the Native Americans had to deal with the proprietors and had to deal with the Native Americans. It was a mishmash. It was really messed up.
Weren't the proprietors, some of the proprietors were given the land from a king, weren't they? Because I know my
From a
family
what?
were given, for example, the end of Long Island, of where my family came from, Southampton. They
right.
were deeded the land from the King of England because he owed them money.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, here, you get
Well,
that
William
one.
Penn's family, William
Yeah,
No,
Penn
well, I
was
said
like-
my family came over.
Proprietors under the British law system and so forth were doing it legally.
Yeah,
The people who were dealing with the Native Americans, that was illegal in British law. And they had no papers or anything to back it up. So they had no proof other than the word of mouth. And that would be calling the Native Americans in and having them say this and that still wouldn't hold up,
right.
okay?
We took advantage of the Native Americans.
Oh, yes.
Because they didn't understand the property rights at all.
That's right. They didn't have the concept. The basic thing that they left, and that's one of the things I'm dealing with, are the names. You know, the Native American words and so forth. This is basically one of the few things that are left. And as I say, South Brunswick could potentially have one of these names. Okay. We finish with that and we get to 1683. The proprietors get Governor Lowry to build a road. And this road is to connect the two capitals, East Jersey and West Jersey. This is a big deal because this cuts right through our area. If you know your roads, you're talking about the eastern border of South Brunswick. You know where Road Hall is, that sort of thing. And that's part of it. And the idea was to have a route that connected the two capitals, because when the governor called for a session of the assembly, he might call it for Burlington, might call it for Perth Amboy, and had to get there. So the back and forth. And that became the lower road. Now, I think part of that, because George's Road was supposedly a Native American trail, so part of Lowry's Road could have been one of the Native American trails. It's just like our Route 27. We know that was definitely the Assunpink Trail going all the way down to Trenton, 27206. But we didn't retain the names. They have different names.
So there's one thing I wanted to point out. I noticed on Route 27 that was it could have been an Indian trail, but they made trail marker trees. Do you know about that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so I have an example of one there. They bent the tree down. I didn't know about this till I started to look it up, a few days ago.
Yeah, that's
So that's
great.
the way they would have a marker there. That you don't have to upkeep a sign. It was just a tree that was deformed in a certain way,
Right.
and that would denote that's where the trail was.
Wow.
And that could be an example, but they don't know for sure. But
Right.
it was, things were like that, so that was documented.
And the Europeans did the same thing.
They did it
when
too?
They did their maps.
Oh,
They-
okay.
They got the oak tree, okay, and you run it so many rods or lengths to the
Perches.
maple tree. And
What
most
happens
of
if
those
the trees-
trees are gone.
Yeah, what happens after the tree goes,
Oh,
right?
yeah, it looks like
But that was a
early
big
deeds are
deal.
like- If you look at early
Yeah.
deeds, you go somebody purchased to a rock.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I know, it's crazy.
like Higgins, he was a land surveyor. Like George Washington was into that. Well, Higgins was, and Higgins was surveying the land that he bought, coming over from Piscataway. Wetherill, I think the father was a land surveyor too, and he had purchased some land in South Brunswick, which became the Wetherill Plantation, 1,600 acres. Okay, so we get to March 1st, 1683, Middlesex County is formed. So now we're getting to our local area. The other counties were Bergen, Essex, and Monmouth for East Jersey. I'm not dealing with West Jersey, but this is East Jersey. In 1684, Perth Amboy is the capital of East Jersey, and they have something about West Jersey. I'll just skip that. And in 1688, the proprietors surrendered their rights to James II until 1692, when they reasserted their claims. So the proprietors were still in the mix as we're going headed towards the 1700s. On May 14th, 1688, Somerset County is set off from Middlesex County. Now, just like Piscataway was laying claim to our area, there was a time when Somerset County claimed all of our area. In other words, the other side of the King's Highway. And as we work on this and the boundary lines and so forth, this parcel might have been taken away from this county. That county might have traded and gotten another piece. So you got to think of these borders at this time as very fluid and going this way or that way. And we have some remnants of that still with us today.
Yeah, there's actually an awesome map that's out there that actually maps out county lines by years. But it's only about that big. I use it all the time at work. But it actually maps out like this date it was this county here at this date, but and then this boundary was this county at this date. It's really.
So they shifted a lot, yeah.
Oh my God.
All
yeah.
over?
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's also a website, if it's still up, called Maps of Us. I don't know if it's still up there, or Map of Us. And actually, it's like all maps and how it's changed over time. I don't know if it's
Cool.
still up there or not.
Okay, on this map that we're looking at, the second map in your packet, do you see where Piscataway Township is? And do you see where Sand Hills is indicated, and you see Lower Road, and you see Upper Road? Okay, well, your Upper Road would be what you know as Route 27. And the Lower Road would be your Cranbury South River Road, basically. Okay, so this map is showing the two access roads to get to South Brunswick for the settlers to settle in the area. And notice how dominant Sand Hills is on this map. And that becomes a major landmark for us. What the Native Americans used Sand Hill for, I'm not sure. Because they haven't picked up any artifacts from around there. And I have a feeling it was, just as the trails are, to get around. There's a place to get around. But it was a high point. And it could be like a lookout area for hunting, that type of thing. But other than that, it doesn't really serve as a factor. However, that could be a name for South Brunswick, Sand Hills, or Sand Hill. That was a possibility.
They did call it that,
Yeah.
right?
Excuse me, I just.
Sure. Okay. Now let's move to the next one. The next map, you see, now here they call it Predmore Swamp. There's different spellings on it because, as I said, the spelling was real corrupt in those days. But this is Predmore Swamp and Indians Ferry. So this is showing you New Brunswick and who owned what land. And you see the lines that are at an angle headed towards us. That would be claims that would spill over into South Brunswick. So you see John Indian's claims there. And you see Longfeld. And south of Longfeld, Thomas Lawrence would have the Lawrence Brook area. He was related, I think, by marriage to Longfeld. And Longfeld married a Native American. So those are your earliest ones to claim land in South Brunswick. all the way from the river on out.
Also noticed that Greenland at the time had a tavern that basically near where, on the other side of the road.
Right. That's true. And that's that Piscataway thing again. Yeah,
Yeah,
he was big in the area.
going down to Rare Landing.
Okay, now let's go to your next map. And this indicates here, this deal with Somerset County. But it also deals with the, big landowners for the area. You see Peter Sonmans? And, you see the, Route 27 is your broken line? You see how it cuts through there and it shows 10-mile run and 9-mile run? So you're right at the heart of South Brunswick when you're talking about that. And you see Harrison's track. So Sonmans and Harrison are the proprietors who are owning this area. And if you didn't purchase from the Native Americans, you would have to purchase from them. And if they said, that's our land, that's not the Native Americans' land, then you'd have to purchase from either of these two people. And of course, they were big on subdividing the land and selling lots of patents. Okay. Now, then we get a closer look here. These are sections of it. Peter Sonmans' land. And notice the number of acres, 15,600 acres. That's a big deal. That's a lot of territory. And you'll see in the lower right-hand corner, remember that other map that showed John Indian's claims? Okay, so you see where Sonmans picks up from John Indian's. Okay. Now let's see what else I got here. Okay, this is the next map is one that shows this thing of Piscataway and Woodbridge. These were the two big townships going back before a whole mess of, I think 124 townships were by law created.
In 1798, you mean?
Yeah, this is before that.
Oh, okay.
This is before that. So this township of Piscataway was claiming an area across the river. And again, I think, yeah, and this goes all the way down to the Delaware River. So this is showing the Route 27 thing in the lower road, that type of thing. This is a tough map to follow, but it helps you out a little bit. Okay, now we get to 1762 map, and you might want to use the looking glass to see, because here's names of people in 1762 who lived along the King's Highway. And you might be able to make out some names there. And I'll get you up chronologically up to 1762. Okay, now in 1701, about the time that Higgins is settling into his land, the proprietors gave up their rights to Queen Anne, and she reunited East Jersey and West Jersey. So big things are happening. East Jersey and West Jersey are now called New Jersey, and the proprietors are giving up their claims to the land. Now, there's settlements, there's money involved and so forth like that. So they're not really going to give it up totally. In April 15th, 1702, reunification of East and West Jersey. This is under Queen Anne. In April 17th, 1702, New Jersey becomes a royal province under Lord Cornbury as governor. The worst governor that New Jersey ever had.
Really?
And you got to look up Lord Cornbury to find out how odd and strange
There
that
he is.
person was.
Well, he's
There we
got an
go.
interesting picture.
He was woke before woke was
That's
even
Berkeley.
dreamed
That's
of.
Berkeley. That's Berkeley.
Oh, that's not cornbread.
Oh.
Oh, let's see, we can get cornbread.
That's close enough. But Lord Cornbury admired Queen Anne so much that he dressed up, not only to be like Queen Anne, but to be Queen Anne.
She sent dresses to him.
And so he was our cross-dressing governor. And he was in charge of a lot of corruption, and they had to remove him. But you check out Lord Cornbury. And one of my stories, I named a horse after him, Lord Corn. And I didn't explain too much of where the name came from. That's up to the reader to find out. But anyway, he's a lot of fun, and he makes our New Jersey history colorful. So you got to give him credit.
He's, the original story for that is located up at the main branch of the Edison Library
Uh-huh.
with more details about how Queen Anne sent over dresses. He
Huh.
did big events and he dressed the part.
Yeah. Yeah. And Lord Cornbury was married too.
Yeah.
And the wife was going along with this charade. Okay,
She's a
1710.
lord.
I'm sure she had somebody on the side.
Yeah,
Seriously.
probably. 1710, Somerset County, Middlesex County border is redefined. So this is our first clue as far as redefining the border. And remember, it's fluid along Route 27.
Thank you.
And they're trying to
Yeah,
get
never
things settled. In 1714, the border is established, but that's the 1714 border. That's not exactly the way it looks today, but it roughly follows Route 27. The only problem is Kings Highway, Route 27 is going to shift here for a while. That's going to shift over there for a while, depending on how the farmers want the road to go and how they want to use the land. So farmers would come along. It's only a dirt road. You know, you're not talking about brick, stones, anything like that. And so if they wanted to claim a certain area, they'd claim it until the authorities came and said, you know, you can't do that. So, oh, too bad. It's already been done. Here's a crop of corn on where the road used to be, and it swerves around this way instead of going this way. So that was ongoing. But this is where it starts at the very beginning of the 18th century. Okay. In 1758, the Brotherton Indian Reservation is set up. This is in the area called Indian Mills in South Jersey. I think it's down there by the Air Force Base, isn't it? McGuire Air Force Base? I think it's in that area. I mean, in other words, the land area is still there. The Native Americans aren't there. That was over 3,000 acres set aside for the Lenni Lenape Native Americans. And so the Native Americans that were in our area are gone by 1738. And I've only found maybe 3 or 4 examples of Native Americans who were around at the time of the American Revolution in our area. Okay, that show up on a census type of thing. So they're gone. Only some names remain, and that's it. So that gives you an idea of how late the Native Americans were here, 1758. Now, there was an Indian settlement in the Jamesburg area, and I may have a note or two on that, but that's the Brainerd settlement, and that was to Christianize Native Americans. And that was around up until this time. And Brainerd came out of, he had a thing set up at the Presbyterian Church in Cranbury. And then he set up this thing in Jamesburg, but it was right on the border with South Brunswick. And I have a feeling that the Wetheralls were quite familiar with that Native American thing because their land went down into that Jamesburg area too. So that's an interesting thing that still needs to be researched. In July 1776, the New Jersey province was named the state of New Jersey. That's when it become officially the state of New Jersey. And of course, that has to do with the beginning of the Revolutionary War. In 1798, the Township Act was passed by the New Jersey legislature, and 124 townships were created. One of those townships was South Brunswick. Now, what were we called before South Brunswick?
South Ward of New Brunswick.
The South Ward.
Thank you.
But a lot of people think, well, we're south of New Brunswick, so that must be where the name comes from. It does
Oh.
not.
Oh.
The 2 townships were set up simultaneously, North Brunswick Township, which was before called what?
The North.
The
Ward
North Ward.
of New Brunswick.
And South Brunswick Township was called the South Ward. So we get our south and north gets its north from the fact that the North Township is north of South Brunswick and the South Township is south of North Brunswick. It has nothing to do with New Brunswick. Nothing to do. And there is a settlement years later where New Brunswick gets a part of Somerset County. And that technically could be called West Brunswick.
So that's why there's no West Brunswick?
That's why there's no West
Okay.
Brunswick. Okay, it just becomes part of New Brunswick. But at one time, it was East Somerset County.
Okay.
So it's interesting how this thing plays out. But now you know where the South comes from. It has nothing to do, because a lot of people think, oh, New Brunswick, we're south of New Brunswick, and that's it. No, it's not as easy
So
as
it's from the
that.
South Ward and it's south of New Brunswick? That's the two reasons?
That's the common thinking.
Uh-huh,
But it's because of our relationship with North
with
Brunswick.
North Brunswick, okay.
Yeah,
If you look at the tax ratables from back at that time, it was called the South Ward of New Brunswick in 1778, but by 1779, they started calling it South Brunswick.
Okay,
79, 79, 80. So if you took the tax ratables, that's when the name South Brunswick comes up.
yeah.
okay.
Why
Okay,
didn't
now,
they make a geographical decision and put North Brunswick north of New Brunswick and South Brunswick south?
Because you weren't there.
That now you're thinking logically. You got it's just like the spelling back in the old days. The logic for these things, you know, we say that Native Americans didn't have borders and so forth. Maybe they had something that was right, because we make a big deal about it and we do all this crazy stuff while we're trying to settle this and settle that. Let's take a look at the next map in the packet. This is the one that has the separation of Somerset and Middlesex. Again, if you need the thing to look at the details there, this sets out nicely the mile runs. You see the 1 mile run, the 3 mile run, the 6 mile run, and there's Manley's Tavern that's on your map there. And then you have the 9 mile run, the 10 mile run. You see where that crosses Route 27 twice. And there's a Williams Tavern there, you know, where you have the old Georgetown Road, which ran into Route 27. They didn't have 518 yet. And the old Georgetown Road is going to run down to the bridge across the Rocky Hill. But that is down by the river. That is Rocky Hill at the time. And then the other branch, of course, goes to Kingston. That's the regular Kings Highway. But that gives you some idea of the county line along the road and the Somerset County, the Middlesex County line. Okay. Now then I have some maps just to finish this off. This is more modern times. I don't have a date on this map, but I did have, I gave Charlie a Kingston map here of 1872. And this one probably is probably early 1800s, I would say. But anyway, you might want to compare the two.
It's after 1860 because the Rocky Hill Branch Railroad has come through. That comes through in 1863.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and the House of Refuge is now Withington's estate.
Right. And this is, I just put this in here because it's a clearer map. And you notice the county thing, the Somerset County on one side, the Middlesex County on the other. Okay, so these are modern maps that I have for you. 1935. Again, you might be interested looking for a name. But this shows you part of South Brunswick.
Oh, yeah.
You see Sand Hills there and Black Horse, and this is 1935, which of course predates Kendall Park. And you see where it says Franklin Park, and Franklin Park overlaps the Route 27. And what this is great for is it gives you an idea of the people that Herb Kendall had to buy from in order to create Kendall Park. Because the names that you see here are the names of the people who owned the land that he had to buy from. And you see the whole mishmash of landowners there. And then you have a more modern map, which shows some historical highlights. And then you get some real modern maps there, and that takes care of your packet. Okay. Pat, if you want to look through here, I can now give this up.
Oh, thank you.
You can check that out.
Like I said, 'cause I know I look at a lot of maps from the.
Okay.
Now.
Now, I get you up to, I get you up to the local chronology here, because now we'll deal with the South Brunswick thing. And I have a packet here that starts with 1745 map. John, it's over to you. You may want to share this. I actually may have extras here. Let me get one down there. And you two could share without fighting, right?
Sometimes.
Okay. Now you can keep these if you wish. These make great table settings. You can- especially the swamp areas. You know, if you spill your soup on a swamp area, it's great. Great way to
The
define
little
it.
teal, make it look aged.
Yeah, right. Put it in the oven, heat it up a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Get it all crinkly. Okay, now I'm going to go through local as you try to discern the names that are on this map here, but this is a challenge. This gives you the Route 27 thing again, and the Millstone River, and gives you little figures for the houses on either side of the thing. 1677, Thomas Lawrence, a New York baker, buys land along Lawrence Brook. That's called Piscopec, or Piscopeak, and that could have been a name for South Brunswick. In October 20th, 1693, Peter Solomons is granted 15,600 acres. That covers most of South Brunswick. So I think if we had a list of names for South Brunswick, Solomons would have been near the top of the list. And Solomons, New Jersey, this has a nice ring to it. It's nice and gentle. It's got the S in it, and I think it would have been great. But I hear he was a nasty guy.
No.
1698 to 1700, land surveyor Jedediah Higgins buys lands from the Native Americans. March 15, 1713, the boundary first set up between Somerset and Middlesex County. In March of 1713, 14, Somerset County loses southeastern strip of Middlesex County. Because, see, at this time, when they do the settlement, Somerset County is claiming a lot of South Brunswick. So they're giving that up.
It's actually first claim, it just is interested in the area up by
Franklin Park?
no, west of that, the upper Raritan part.
Oh, okay.
So it gets that, and then at some point, they claim all the way to, into South Brunswick.
Yeah,
And Middlesex County does not particularly dig on this,
right.
so they say, well, we'll make it the road.
Right, which is logical. Yeah, and there
Well,
was this.
except it makes all the settlements along the road be split between the
Yeah,
counties.
right. Hence, Old Road and Route 27. You know, which is still a thorn in our side, right? We're still battling that. Okay. Ever since Charlie told us about it, we were happy until you told us about
Until you knew
it.
about it. Well, South Brunswick has an old road.
Right,
It has a new road.
right.
It has an old new road.
That's right. Right.
So,
Right.
that might be a good name for the town too.
Old new.
Right, well,
Old New Township.
right, right, there you go, Old New Township. ON for short. Okay, here we go. June 24, 1770, John Harrison buys land from Native Americans, western parts of South Brunswick. May 9th, 1766. This is a map of the division line. And this is separating Somerset and Middlesex counties. This is the Dunham map, Azariah Dunham. This is a big time map. 1790, Somerset County boundary changes with Middlesex County. 1822, Somerset County and Middlesex County, the water boundary is adjusted. February 26, 1838, Middlesex County gives up land to form Mercer County. Okay, now we got a more complicated situation than we had before. 1847 and 1939, Monmouth gained small chunks of Middlesex County. Moving right along, March 29th, 1855, the county division line between Kingston Bridge and Little Rocky Hill, Old Road is defined. And we were just talking about that. 1855 and 1858, changes in the Somerset County boundary. March 29th, 1878, boundary between Middlesex and Somerset clarified and redefined. This is pertaining to Kingston. 1878, Kingston, Somerset County clarified boundary. That's the same thing. 1892, the water boundary is clarified. All right. So this is going back and forth over several years. And as I said, there's a fluid situation there. And I believe in 1919, the old road section is finally settled. I think that's when it was settled. And that's where, if you're driving along Route 27, and you'll see a sign on what looks like the South Brunswick side that says Franklin Township.
Yeah.
And that's at the entrance to the old road, or exit, depending which way you're going. So that strip that you see there with the Little Rocky Hill Fire Department and the florist,
The three different, plant places.
yeah, right. And one on the Somerset County side. But that strip of land, so that on the old road, the people living on the east side of Old Road are South Brunswick citizens. People on the west side, even though you're not to Route 27 yet, are in Franklin Township.
I believe the reason for that is that there's a substantial bridge that's on Route 27, and they couldn't make good bridges early on. There's a little tiny bridge on the old road, which would have been a ford or something like that. So the old road was indeed the driest way to get north. And the
Okay.
whole thing was full of boulders too. That's the other thing.
Oh,
They
yeah,
don't call it Rocky Hill for
Devil's
nothing.
feather bed, yeah.
They don't call it Rocky Hill for nothing.
Yeah.
And so the way around was along that old road.
Mm-hmm.
And as their ability to do earth moving and make bridges and stuff came in, they said, we could go straight here, and this would make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah, well,
So
that's
it's
European
like a bypass.
thinking.
It's a bypass.
The Native American thinking was to go around to the path of least resistance is going to be the trail. That's the old road. Okay, when the Europeans come along, we're talking about much later on, they decide they're going to cut down fairly straight.
But speaking of that, there is a tool called New Jersey GeoWeb where you can actually put in an address and it'll tell you right which county it is in, because it gets confusing around Kingston because one side of the street is one side is Somerset and one side is Middlesex. So for example, I just put one in here. So this is which one? This is actually this is the mill. So the mill in Kingston is actually in Mercer County.
Right.
And then what else do I have?
Because the
For
river is the
example?
dividing line. But
And
what's
then,
interesting, here we go.
We have Inatera,
Yeah.
which is right next door. I mean, well, it's pretty close right there, and that's Middlesex.
Oh, good.
And then across the street, just right across the street from
little
that, is
triangle.
Somerset. But this is an interesting tool called New Jersey GeoWeb, and
it's
you can
wonderful.
actually go in there and punch in your home address. You get some of the physical, you can get some information about like waterways and things like that, but the political boundaries are defined with this. So today, Kingston, like I said, is mixed up in the middle of the bridge. It's supposed to be three different places.
So
So-
what was interesting was that until Princeton got unified, everything north of the bridge was Montgomery Township. After it became just plain in part of in Somerset County, and everything south of the bridge was Middlesex County. So that the mill was actually in Windsor Township.
It was in,
And then it was in West Windsor Township
wow.
until Middlesex, until Mercer County was created. And then for a while it was in Mercer County, West Windsor Township.
Wow.
And then finally Princeton claimed everything down to the river at least.
So that was actually called West Windsor at one point, the mill.
But, well, it was the Kingston Mill because you know it's just
But it was
It's
supposed to be in
associated
West
with
it's
Windsor.
where it is. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's like
Huh.
like the whole idea of naming things after a township. The townships are going to change.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
going to stick with a place name instead.
Right, right.
So
Okay, as
Anyway.
you look through your packet, I'm talking about the large pieces of paper. The second one, 1750 to 1755, this is the Cranberry Brook area. So this is our southeastern border, and you see John Harrison's name again.
Here we go.
This is the one that has that printed on there, number XL1.
yes,
And you can make out some names there, but unfortunately, it's a rough map, so it's not, you can't see everything clearly. Okay, the next map is clearer, and if you follow the dots, you can see where George's Road goes through, and this is it has the outline of South Brunswick. So you can see, and Sonman's is, a name is mentioned again, almost covering this entire area. And then you see the runs up there in the northern part. On some of the old maps, they connect Heathcote Brook to Lawrence Brook. And that was a mistake by the map makers, because one sheds one way and one sheds the other, and they don't go together. So beware of that when you look at the old maps, because it will show that it's like cutting South Brunswick into two parts, and they're not. They don't connect. Okay, now we move on to. This is 1816. And this shows you nicely, you see where the crossroads is? And it shows you Pigeon Swamp and Burnett Swamp. And this one, I think, does show Lawrence Brook and Heathcote Brook together. You see that?
There's a big swamp there. Is it the same swamp that drains both ways?
No, well, no, Pigeon Swamp drains into Lawrence Brook.
Well,
And
not prison, but the one that's up by where the railroad track is.
The Burnett Swamp? Is that the
Uh,
one you're talking about?
the one's by the U in South Brunswick. It's in Brunswick.
Yeah, that would be Burnett Swamp. See, Longbridge Farm is indicated on this map
Yeah,
also.
that's good.
Yeah. And again, this is a rough map, but it helps you to locate things and so forth. And it's interesting to see where
Here.
the modern
Right,
boundary
right.
is
Swampy area.
and the various landmarks. You see Road Hall down in the
road
lower
here.
right-hand corner?
Yeah,
See, there's a Stage Hall Tavern, there's a Road Hall Tavern. This is something that Seal was trying to work on. It was really two taverns, one on one side of the road, one on the other. I maintain that there was only one, but some of the maps show two. One called Stage Hall, can't find it, and the other called Road Hall. And this could have been a community, but it's right on the borderline there. And that stretch you see that's straight, that's part of the Lowry's Road thing, the Cranberry South River Road. Going along there. Okay. Then we go to an 1833 map. And this gives you Lawrence Brook separated from Heathcote Brook. So by the time you're in 1830s, you got it straightened out. One brook is going to the south, the other brook is going to the east.
But
Or
they share
to
a
the
swamp.
north.
They share a swamp, though.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, they're close. Um, and you see Devil's Brook coming out of the one swamp. You see Dean's Mill, Van Pelt's,
This would make sense.
and Van Pelt's would be what later became Davidson's Mill. And then you got Kingston up there. Check the dots for Kingston because that's your big village. If you check the dots for Crossroads or the checks for Kingston, they're not even close. And we have to assume the map maker was pretty accurate. You see Plainsboro? And the little dots for that. You see Cranbury, and you see how Cranbury is spelled. That was the original. There was a minister who said, this isn't dignified. We just can't be called after a fruit. So we will have the English traditional way, and we'll change it to Cranbury.
Is that a story or is that true?
That is close to the fact.
That's what I'm saying. I can
But
never
it
tell
comes
with
from
you.
me, and as Yogi Berra says, you can look it up, okay? But no, that's what I've heard.
Okay.
And so Cranberry changed its name, and we gave up that territory so Cranberry could be formed, and we gave up territory so Plainsboro could be formed.
Like 1912?
We're getting to it.
Yeah.
And this also shows Scudder's, which was the southern corner of
Yeah.
South Brunswick.
Yeah. Is that like you look up at top?
It says Gulick's Mill, yes.
1840 shows the southwestern section. Kingston, this is not the greatest map of all, but what it does show you is boundary lines of the various farms and so forth. And so you see the farmland divided up. And Princeton is down in your lower left hand corner.
Kingston is here. Princeton is here.
And look at that
Here.
nice picture of Stony Brook.
Okay, yeah, here's Stony Brook. Now, remember I said this was the original name for the Princeton area, Stony Brook. And is
I look across that
this is what is this called? A walkway bridge?
footbridge.
I haven't been there.
I don't know. I found it online. It looks pretty interesting.
Yeah, this looks like you could walk it right now.
Yeah,
I don't know if I've
Is
ever
this
seen
in
that.
that
I've never
walking
seen
tour
that.
area?
I
They
think
have a
so.
walking
Yeah, I
tour
think it's the
area.
woods. Yeah.
It's in the instant
Yeah.
woods, so.
There you go.
You gotta
Stony
be
Brook. And now some of the very old maps show Stony Brook going for miles and miles, much further than it actually went. So back in the real old days, Stony Brook was a big deal, and I could see why they would name the area of Stony Brook. But the name didn't stick, and Princeton won out. And then you got into the thing of Queenstown and
Princessville.
Kingstown, and that. So there was that whole thing going on, trying to outdo one another.
Maybe.
Okay, then we go to 1850. And now we're getting to the look of how South Brunswick is today. So you can sort of say that the boundary lines are basically settled by 1850, if you want a ballpark figure to work with. But you might want to check details and so forth, because I'm sure there's exceptions to the rule here. Again, a looking glass here will help you to look at the names and so forth, and to see which names are still around today of the people that were in the area. You see the Indian Fields area, and you see how unsettled that area is. And so this name goes back quite a way. Now, it's the European name for the area. The Native Americans probably used this as a seasonal hunting area, not as a settlement area. But a lot of artifacts were found in that Indian Fields area. And you see the names of the farmers and so forth that were around that. You see the Day name on the border, the south end, that was a big deal. You see Applegate, that's a big name. Perrine, and you can pick out a lot of people. And this also shows the rail line.
And how it goes through from Dean's or Martinsville.
Yeah. Which now that's part of Dean's.
I think they just named a station there. It's something.
Okay, and then I have a 1861 map just to move along. You still have the name Crossroads, you got Martinsville, you got Woodsville. And of course, you have Kingston and Plainsboro now. And you see the borderline there in the south and the east. And then I have an 1876 map, which is challenging to read the details.
Oh,
on.
hello.
That's a good eye test for you. But you see how we're approaching into the modern era. And then I have 1876. Oh, which is the same. I have two copies of the same map. All right. Okay, now I hope that helps you with the things, and I'm just going to finish up with going around to the various towns around and townships around South Brunswick, so you get an idea of their names and how they changed and so forth. And I'll just do these at random here. I'm not going to do them in any separate order. But you have a picture for each one. Okay?
I have the ones that you wrote down, but I have to find the order. I have Piscataway starting, then
Well,
Franklin.
why don't you control it? So
Okay.
you give me a
Okay, that's a
picture,
good idea. So
and I'll line it up with
we
my
talked
notes.
about Piscataway earlier, but that's the one I have first.
Okay, good. Let's go Piscataway. Okay. Proprietors were big in the area, of course. In 1700, Piscataway they claim this is Piscataway Township early on. They claim from the Watchung Mountains across the Raritan Valley. That's a huge area, but that's Piscataway Township claiming it in 1700. And this is at the time that Jedediah Higgins is getting the land, okay, in an area which would be claimed by Piscataway Township as far as the law is concerned and rules and regulations. This went all the way to the province line near Princeton, and it involved Princeton, Kingston, a whole mess of places. Piscataway lost this area to Somerset County in 1688. It was confirmed in 1709. And by 1730, this is what was left for Piscataway: Highland Park, Edison, South Plainfield, Dunellen, Greenbrook, and Middlesex. Okay, so those areas were also part of Piscataway. So Piscataway was a huge deal. And you can understand why people from Piscataway were the ones who were like the first people to settle in South Brunswick area. It was sort of logical. Okay, what's the next one?
Next one is Franklin.
Franklin. Okay, Franklin Township. Now, this is our longest common border with Franklin Township. It was formerly known as the Eastern Precinct. The Raritan Indians were big in Franklin Township. And of course, that would be where the river end of it is. The Dutch were in there earliest around 1650. Some of the names that were big in when the Europeans were there, the Dutch: Hageman, Skenk, and Corneliu, and those are also found in South Brunswick. The Dutch Reformed Church was set up at 3 Mile Run first, 1703. Then it moved to 6 Mile Run in 1766. And later on, it moved further down the road. Franklin Township was incorporated February 21st, 1798. And let's see what else we got here. Franklin Park, before it was known as Franklin Park, because, now, does everybody know where the Franklin came from? It's sort of a
governor?
no-brainer, but it's a big dispute.
Is it the governor?
Nobody knows for sure. Yeah, well, William Franklin is a possibility, and Ben Franklin's a possibility. You know what they did? They voted, and I don't have the exact year, but they voted and said, well, Ben Franklin's a nicer guy than Williams. So we're gonna say that our Franklin is from Ben Franklin, not William. Okay, but it's not really clear, because at the time, William Franklin's your governor, you know, so it's interesting. Now, an interesting thing there, Franklin Park was originally called 6 Mile Run. And the Somerset County Courthouse was in the area. And that was from 1714 to 1737, on the borderline, okay? And it burned down in 1737. Rocky Hill was incorporated December 1889. Okay, what's your next one?
Well, New
So,
Brunswick.
so one cool thing about the middle of Franklin is the town of Middlebush,
Middlebush, yeah.
which makes more sense in Dutch, where it means the middle of the woods, because
Uh-huh.
bos is the Dutch
Excellent.
word for forest.
Right. And who is the character we should remember from Middlebush? You can look it up. The Middlebush Giant.
Huh?
It's a huge guy that was buried
Oh.
in Middlebush.
Oh,
Huge. And some people claim this is legendary. He was almost 8 feet tall. So you can check that out. That's in that Franklin
Oh, no.
history book. Okay, New Brunswick. Out of New Brunswick come the Minnesink and Assaping Trail, so this is a big deal for Native Americans. It's called Prigmore Swamp from 1681 to 1697. Then it's called, and there's an overlap there, Indian's Ferry when John Indian sets that up, 1691 to 1697. Now, the New Brunswick comes from the region in Lower Saxony, Braunschweig. And that has to do with the royal family of England, because they have Germanic connection there, and that's how we get the Brunswick. That's how we get our Brunswick for South Brunswick, from there.
We don't get the cheese.
Right. The town is known as a town around the 1730s, and by 1784, it's declared a city. Let's see, what else we got here? 1850, Middlesex gains part of for New Brunswick in Somerset County. Okay, next
It used to
one.
be just right, the line in the middle was the county line, so that wasn't New Brunswick. Well,
North Brunswick,
New
here's our
Brunswick.
friendly neighbor.
there we go.
Okay, north-south football games.
Yep.
The North Brunswick name, I have it starting and being most used right at the turn of the century, 1800. The other names before that, it was called the North Ward, we know that. It was also called Bodine's Corners, or Bodine's Corners. And it was also referred to a certain area, 3 Mile Run. The name is first mentioned in the Board of Freeholders meeting, February 28th, 1779. It's incorporated February 21st, 1798 or 99. It lost part of its land to East Brunswick in 1860, and it lost part of its land for Milltown in 1889. Territorial exchanges were made with Franklin Township in 1850 and 1858. Those are changes along Route 27. With South Brunswick in 1856, and with New Brunswick in 1860, 1917, and 1929. So North Brunswick has lost a lot of territory, and that's one reason why we're bigger than North Brunswick is, because other towns were taking areas away. The oldest families in there, and again, you got some Dutch names, Voorhees, Van Loo, Bodine, and Vanderbilt. Okay, what's the next one?
East Brunswick.
East Brunswick. Okay. East Brunswick.
You got a
Um,
place called Washington.
Now, East Brunswick was made up of parts of North Brunswick and Monroe Township. And Old Bridge, you gotta throw in there too. It was settled early in the 1680s, that area. And associated with it were the villages of Halmetta, South River, and what was South River called before South River? Washington. Interesting. And South River separated from East Brunswick in 1898. There's Spotswood, parts of that were involved. Milltown, we mentioned that, and Old Bridge. It was incorporated in 1860. A portion was taken from Monroe in February 28th, 1860, and also North Brunswick lost some land for East Brunswick. The earliest settlement was the Thomas Lawrence area, and that was the names there were Cornelius Longfeld, David Moody, and Samuel Gordon, Robert Hardy, Abraham Barkaloo, and we had Barkaloos in South Brunswick, and John Leonard, who was a wealthy landowner. The DeHarts and Bissett name also show up for East Brunswick. What's the next one? Monroe. Okay. Monroe Township is named after whom?
James Monroe.
James Monroe, our fifth president. Okay. Now, Jamesburg, that's another story there. What was Jamesburg named after? King James?
James Monroe?
No. There was a James Buckaloo, and he built a schoolhouse.
Okay.
That's all you have to do, and you get your name for the name of the town. Just build a school.
Okay.
That sort of happened with Dayton, Crossroads, where the school was involved, and they named after the guy who saved the school. Before Jamesburg was called West's Turnout, or simply West's, and that comes from Billy West Tavern. And people would say that for the town. I'm going to Billy West Tavern. They meant they're going to Jamesburg. And it was also called Ensley's Mills. So Jamesburg had quite a few names. The areas in Monroe Township that were interesting, Squonkam is a Native American name for the place of evil ghosts.
Oh, that's good.
Okay. Lake Manalapan, this was after the land of good bread. And remember I told you about the Indian thing that Brainerd set up? That was the Bethel Indian Mission, and that was located along Wigwam Brook. And it's mostly associated with Jamesburg, but it's right on the border there. And that's John Brainerd, and he's a very interesting guy to look up too. The first settlement in the Monroe area, they say, was in 1684-85. And there were people buying 50 acres at a time. Names there were Johnstone, Davison, Skink, Buckaloo. Township was established in 1838. And they got some of the parts from South Amboy Township, which was very large, just like Piscataway Township. South Brunswick was very large. And Monroe was incorporated in 1838. And Jamesburg separated from Monroe Township in 1887.
But Jamesburg is surrounded by Monroe.
That's correct.
Why didn't they get rid of it and make it part of Monroe?
Crazy.
Another
Well,
town.
In the Milltown, same thing.
Yeah,
Surrounded. This is Jersey. It's just like the Jersey traffic circle.
Oh,
Why?
they're building more of them.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
You haven't touched another.
yeah, only in New Jersey. Okay, what's the next one, Randy?
Cranberry.
Cranberry. Okay, Cranberry, right?
Where's the lake?
Okay, now, there were different ways to spell it. There was also a time where they called it Cranborough. And the reason that they named it Cranberry in the first place was one of the families that settled there was the Grant family, Scottish family, because there's a big Scottish influence in Cranberry in the early days. And on the coat of arms of the grant is the cranberry. And so that's why they named it Cranberry, Scottish, okay? But then that minister came along and said, no, that's not dignified enough. So we got to change it. Okay, there was an Indian chief associated with a group called the Cranberry Indians, not a baseball team. Chief Wequahela. And he had a big area. He was a big deal. And he was involved in several treaties. And then we're talking about back 1680s, that type of thing. Do you have a picture of the chief?
No.
No. He wasn't that big. Okay.
He didn't have.
There was proprietor land down there, John Haywood. He sold to Robert Burnett, who sold to Philip French. And Philip French is big in New Brunswick. Proprietor Thomas Cooper, 1683. He sold to John Gordon, who sold to John Roachhead, who started the village. And the first settlement was between 1682 and 1697 that it got established. John Harrison was involved there, and he was the one that started the idea of the tavern. And you know the Cranberry Inn.
Yeah, right.
Okay, well, it has ancestors before it was the Cranberry Inn, but he's the one who started it. Now, George Riscaric bought the land from John Harrison, and George's Road is named after George Riscaric, not King George, but George Riscaric. And he was big setting up the tavern in Cranberry, and he wanted traffic, the public, to get to the thing, so he had to build a road from New Brunswick to Cranberry. Okay, portions of South Brunswick go to Cranberry in 1872, and in March and in April, they got portions from Monroe Township, and therefore Cranberry becomes a big deal. Township is organized in 1872. It's redefined in 1885, and it's renamed Cranberry with the B-U-R-Y in 1869. Next one. Plainsboro. Okay. Plainsboro is like our little sister here. This is the forgotten one. And portions of South Brunswick are taken away to create Plainsboro in 1919. And that's when the township is incorporated. Before it was called Plainsboro, they had several names. Plain Tavern was a name for the area, obviously for the tavern. The Borough of the Plains, and then simply the Plains.
Yeah.
Now, the post office had Plainsboro spelled B-O-R-O-U-G-H, the post office there. That was in 1848. By 1894, by presidential decree, Plainsboro became Plainsboro with the B-O-R-O. And all lands north of Plainsboro Road and Day Road or Dye Road in South Brunswick were part of it. And all lands south of Plainsboro Road and Day Road were in Cranberry. Okay? What else we have left? Anything else? How about Princeton?
Yep.
Sure.
Princeton. Okay, I mentioned Stony Brook, and that name lasted till 1724. They had different spellings for it. Of course, they had Princetown, 2 words. They had Princestown with apostrophe S. Princeton with a T-O-N. That was as early as the 1730s. It was settled in 1683. That's the year I have for Henry Greenland, who had a tavern.
It was actually.
And that tavern was where the east-west boundary was decided. Okay. And his son-in-law was Barefoot Princeton. And it's interesting to get the origin of the name Barefoot because there are different spellings of it, the animal and that he was barefooted, that type of thing. So you can check that out. There's different legends about him. He's a legendary character. In 1724, James Leonard called the community Princetown. And it was named after Prince William of Orange. So that's where the name comes from. Or there was a landowner, Henry Prince, and it could have been named after that. I tend to think it's Prince William of Orange. because you know how snobby they are down.
What year was that?
1724. Okay,
When was the college built?
Because
that was 1735, I think.
the College of New Jersey moving south?
Yeah, I think it was
It
1735,
was, yeah. I don't know.
around that time.
It was a
Yeah.
seminary originally.
Yeah, Reverend Witherspoon wasn't there yet, and I think they started with a log cabin. There was a section where Nassau and Harrison Street are called Queenstown. And Lawrence Township had an area called Princessville. So you see how these royalty names were scattered about.
Go along the long road.
And if
Yeah.
Princeton had it, then somebody else wanted something else. Now, the borough of Princeton seceded from the township in 1894. This was a dispute over school taxes. In 1838, when Mercer County was formed, part of West Windsor and Montgomery were made into Princeton Township. So there you have a Princeton Township and you have Princeton Borough.
So at the beginning, it was Windsor Township went right up to Nassau Street, what became Nassau, Route 27, Route 206.
Right.
And Montgomery came all the way down on the other side. And then a Princeton borough, Princeton borough
Right, that would be
was
the city,
created,
the
was
town
was
proper.
created just in the Somerset County part. And then at some point, it claimed a little bit of the Windsor Township part. So it existed there, and the county line went through the middle of it, and that was Windsor, and that was Montgomery,
Mhm.
and so the battle of anyway, that was well past. So the Battle of Princeton wasn't in Princeton; it was
No.
in Montgomery, or it was in West
Right.
Windsor. Which is why the
Yeah,
West-
they-
Which is why the West Windsor Historical Society has a little stuff with it. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah, it didn't really go into Princeton proper for.
except for some cannon fire
Yeah,
into
exactly.
Nassau Hill. Oh,
Now, the amazing thing is that when the borough and the surrounding area got together, guess what year that was?
it was just a few
Recent.
years ago.
2013.
That's right.
That's how long
A
it
decade-
took for them
just
to
over a
get back
decade ago.
together,
Huh,
okay?
It was an economic decision.
Sure.
Yeah, and I have, here's a little factoid. 90 Kingston homes claim a Princeton address.
Uh-huh. Well, yeah,
live in South Brunswick.
Well, no, because the South
office.
Oh, here we
Brunswick
go.
Post Office.
Huh?
Here we go.
So
Yeah, I know.
yeah, I had a map of the
Yeah.
Kingston Postal District is this weird little
Yeah.
whatever's left because it doesn't
Yeah.
have postal delivery
Uh-huh.
except for when it's more than a mile away from the post office.
Is 90 off the mark then?
Well, the thing is that Princeton mailing address goes clear up Franklin to 10 Mile Run.
Right, right.
So it surrounds everything. It actually goes down into Lawrence Township. It's huge.
Yeah, some along Canal Road have a Princeton address.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
yeah, it's-
yeah, just an interesting factoid.
But the other interesting thing is that the road, if you go to Princeton, you go for that matter, if you go to Kettle Park, every road changes name
Uh-huh.
when it crosses the county line.
Yeah.
And it makes sense when you're going from Franklin to South Brunswick. Like Major Road changes name to, or Sand Hill Road changes name to.
Major road.
Major road.
Okay,
Yeah, all across Route 1.
not
That's
across
Route
Route
one.
1, across
Yeah.
Route 27.
And it becomes South
It
Middlebush.
becomes South Middlebush Road, because they didn't care, it's the road from Route 27 to South Middlebush or
New
whatever.
road
Yeah.
changed to Bunker Hill Road.
Yeah, and just everything changes. What's interesting is that also persists, because the county line used to go through Princeton. So the only one that seems to be consistent is Harrison Street turns to North Harrison Street. Well, that's because North Harrison Street was built later, and they didn't have a new name for it. But like Riverside turns into something or other else. Just everything changes. When you go across, Washington becomes Van Deventer or something. I don't know.
They
It's New
all
Jer-
change.
If you're looking for logic, New Jersey's not the place to look.
It makes,
Oh,
it
we
makes
found
total
that out.
sense.
Yes.
We found that
It
out.
makes total sense that the government, which would be this side of the road, would give a name to this.
Yeah.
And that government would give a name to that. And the other thing is that they don't match, especially in South Brunswick and Franklin.
Yeah.
You get all these crazy things where it's,
Okay, well, the bottom line is, you now know where the South came from, and you know where the Brunswick came from. Okay, so you can rest easy tonight,
Oh, yeah.
knowing
I feel so
that your
much better.
name is safe. It's not the best name, but it's the name.
It's on there.
So thank you, it worked out good.
Thank you.
brought some cheese.
Yeah, but I should have brought that cow, that famous cow.
Oh, Elsie.
Elsie the
Elsie?
cow. Yeah, that's a
flamethrower.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah,
flamethrower.
that's a big,
So if anybody has any questions out there, you can email them to Ed.
Yeah, I'm so good with the computer.
well, what I find fascinating is that when you look at the different buildings we have today, like, Central Park really doesn't have a town.
Hello,
East Brunswick really doesn't have a town.
I'm in a meeting
You know,
at
the
the.
township.
Yeah, they're not incorporated.
No, well, what I mean
Doesn't
is
have a
that there's no,
downtown.
there's no
Oh, there's no-
downtown.
there's no
But the
center.
city when it was
There's no
set, it was
center.
there.
Yeah.
There was
No,
never
this
a
is the
center.
normal meeting. Did you
There
get
was
my
no
information
center. There was no-
about the
Well, that's good.
devices?
Talk about
Good. I
East
sent it
Brunswick, because if you
both
go
a message and
to-
also by
I grew up-
email.
There's like the old part of East Brunswick.
Where?
It's at the end of. where's
Very
that
good,
road? Where's that
okay.
Road. If you keep
Right.
on going, trying to explain. There's a road that goes from Spotswood all the way through. It goes into Bordentown, and the road
Right.
goes all the way through there. And there's a little intersection there. There's a little green church nearby, but it's like the old section. There's a really old section of that they call the historic area of East Brunswick. Teeny tiny.
Does that also back up to the old historic village of Old Bridge too?
That's gonna be it.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
I
what
was
they
gonna say, I know
say.
exactly where you're.
Yeah,
going.
that's
old
because
part.
that's where the
It was
historic
the
area
core
is
of the old
listed.
part.
I
Yeah.
can't
Yeah,
explain
I mean,
how,
what I'm saying is that
Of course
those
it
little,
is.
when you drive
But that's
through,
what they call
because
it.
I find it
Right, so right at
interesting.
the bottom of
If
Old
you
Bridge
actually look
Turnpike.
at, if you actually look like,
that's what I was trying to
Kendall
figure out. It's
Park.
been a while.
no, we talk about.
No,
Kendall
because that's
Park
where the
is the main
historic, like
part
they have,
of
they have a
our
museum there and
township, but
everything.
when
Oh,
you
yeah,
look
yeah,
at
I've
it,
been meaning to get there.
It's
I grew
not
up in
of-
Old Bridge.
Yeah,
Mama
actually, I
Junction
work with
is
a kid
actually
who
a
is like
town.
on their board.
If you look at,
But,
if you look at some of the
yeah,
other
but
parts,
it's-
there
they
were
call East
town
Brunswick still.
centers.
Yeah.
There
That's
was
the
a
closest they're
church,
gonna
there
get.
was all these things.
Yeah.
There's
I grew up
nothing
there.
there.
So-
They're still talking about it.
Right, right,
Yeah, South Brunswick is a sprawl,
right.
and so you have these unincorporated communities that aren't really officially recognized as a town
Right.
or as a incorporated
Village
village.
or anything else.
So, you live, on a map, I did figure out where the center of town is. And it's, strangely enough, it's close to the municipal building.
It's about the
But you know where the light is? Where the municipal building is? Where you have Ridge Road and
Right.
have that? Well, right, southeast of the light, right where the houses are, there's a little island of land there.
Okay.
Okay, and that, as I measured on the map using my crude skills, that's the exact center of town.
Oh, okay.
So the municipal building, if you want to say a center of town, it has to be that. It has to be that, because that's as close, and the library is close to the center of town.
pretty close.
So this thing here, and they're adding on the center
Walk
there.
is too.
And I would say this, if they tear down that house, that's the Scarrato house, isn't it?
Yeah.
That little
right.
Cape Cod there?
Yeah.
And I hear the termites really decimated those
Oh,
houses.
it's a shame.
So I don't know if that's viable to stand there, but if they get rid of that and they build something there,
What?
then you can actually create a center of South Brunswick.
Ooh.
You can actually create it, and that would be it.
Okay,
How
so,
old is
so,
that
so it's a
house
library.
anyway? I mean, the Scaratos were there for years.
I know, well, it's vacant now,
Yeah.
but,
So
and Franny wants to turn it into a museum.
the New Jersey laws were such that if you wanted to have services like a fire department, water company, well, you had to turn it into a borough, which is why you get Jamesburg Borough and
Yeah.
and all and East Millstone Borough was a borough for a while and then it turned back into Franklin Township. But that was the way that you got services.
Yeah.
Was to take yourself out of the township. And
Oh,
though
my.
Princeton was actually, initially it was
Well, they
also
did it for
part
the
of
schools.
township. It was
They
also
did it
part
for
of
the schools, yeah.
It was part of the townships. You could actually raise taxes
Mhm.
on that. The farmers did not want to raise taxes, so they were
Yeah.
perfectly happy to have you go off and do your stuff.
Well, the farmers in South Brunswick were not happy with Kendall Park.
No.
That took a while to,
Yeah.
for the two groups to
Oh,
meet.
yeah. Well, the
You know,
whole,
because the city slickers coming out of New
Oh,
York
okay.
and they're settling in Kendall Park and they're taking over. You know,
it's a
and
little bit-
these
it's a
are-
big political thing too.
oh,
back
yeah,
then,
yeah,
too.
and
Huge.
Kendall Park led to us having our own high school. Because
Yeah.
before that, you had the South Brunswick kids
Jamesburg.
going to Jamesburg
Jamesburg.
High, New Brunswick High, and Princeton High.
Right.
So we didn't have that type of thing. So there was none of that school spirit, you know, rah rah. So
There was no.
Property values have been skyrocketing here.
yeah.
And when the train station, if ever it's built,
Yeah,
it's
okay.
gonna go up even more.
That one in North
Keep your
Brunswick.
fingers crossed
Yeah,
for a
especially, I didn't
century.
talk about that forever.
Oh, yeah, ever since we moved here, they've been talking about it.
But nobody
It's
wants it in their
35
backyard.
years.
Nobody wants it in their backyard.
Oh,
Right.
no, of course not.
What's interesting is how Washington
Right when
Township,
traffic is bad enough.
they got another
already.
Washington,
Yeah,
became Robbinsville.
yeah.
Takes me
Oh,
over
because
half
they
hour
said,
to
"Oh,
get
we
to
need a
Trenton.
name," and they
Yeah.
had a whole
It's like
bunch of different communities. They said, well, pick that one.
And South
Depending
Amboy,
on the
which
day.
is so large,
Yeah.
Saraville took 17 square miles out of that, left South Amboy with 2 square miles, and then Old Bridge which was unincorporated,
Yeah.
developed over the years into a higher profile area.
I mean, so,
A friend of mine lived in Old Bridge and he said, we couldn't get our own hospital because nobody in Old Bridge ever got sick. Because all of Old Bridge is covered by other people's post offices. So they duly noted the town that people came from by their mailing addresses, and nobody in Old Bridge got sick, and there were 100,000.
Only in New Jersey.
Built a whole section in
that's the
Laurel
house,
Park.
the house that they
Saraville.
just demolished.
Oh, that
was
log cabin?
before
No,
down here.
they just demolished the house. It's not, it's considered Jamesburg, you know, the Cannon building is.
Oh, that.
Why
the
did they
white
do
one?
that?
The Victorian one?
Why did you,
Yeah,
what was wrong
we
with
drove
that?
by it the other day, we're like, wait a minute, the house is gone.
The log cabin house in South Brunswick has been destroyed.
Yeah, but I'm saying,
The
that's
one- the one on,
the
Major Road.
Victorian.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
this is
gone.
there. Oh, really?
Oh, I didn't-
I was there the
There's a
other
big
day.
hole there now.
Oh, why did they do stuff?
One of the
like
things I was fascinated by in the maps is that I thought, okay, the rail line made them move the Ridge Road around.
Uh-huh.
But the early maps, before they put in the main line, still has the Ridge Road going
Yeah,
all around.
yeah.
Which I guess was the high ground, which was why the Long Ridge was there, because
Yeah,
it was the
well,
only,
I
the only
think that's
place that
the
had
thing
good
they
footage.
call Sapling Ridge. I
That's the house
think
right
that's
there.
it.
okay.
I always thought that Sapling Ridge was over by Davidson Mill, but that ridge line could actually go that whole
Well,
distance.
It's just the non-swamp line, that's the
Yeah,
thing.
yeah,
That's why
yeah.
the Long Bridge.
That's
so-
your high ground,
that?
right?
Okay, I'm gonna return your
Okay,
map.
thanks. You can keep what you want. Pat, that